The Bears Fans Online Podcast.
Or lose week in and week out.
We talk about
Bear football.
Let's forget who we're playing this week and just
Listen to the Bears Fans Online Podcast.
and then we'll have a good time.
Oh, are you going to wrap the fans now?
I'm going to wrap the ones.
Don't listen to the podcast.
Yes, I am.
Why?
You want to ask me why? Because
It's a great show.
I wanted the Bears to be the best. I wanted the Bears to have the best.
Podcast.
I wanted them to be the best. We're going to be here all day, baby. I like this kind of party.
man, this is what it's all about. I mean, people are getting
Their Chicago Bears Fix
this is a good.
podcast.
Shut up.
Now it's time for the Bears Fans Online Podcast with your hosts,
The bad boys of Chicago radio.
Andy Long
Get your mouth shut, jerk.
and Chris Blazek.
See that? That's your IQ, Bobby Zero. They don't like us. I know that. They don't even like me, and I'm a nice guy.
Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in to the Bears Fans Online Podcast / Pregame. I am Andy, joined by Chris here today, and as of course, you should feel free to go to bearsfansonline.com, sign up, join the message board. We've always got a hearty discussion going about this or that, and really cool community, so highly suggest that you guys jump in and enjoy that. So, Chris, how are you doing today, man? It is a football Sunday instead of a football Thursday, which I don't think anyone particularly likes. But how you doing today, man?
Andy, good morning. I am living the dream. Really pumped for a big game today. There's actually some good games in general on the docket. But really, obviously, fired up for our Bears, and we have a winnable game. And I'm trying to temper my enthusiasm because the last time I got really excited for a game, it was against the Colts, and we know how that went. But I think we got a lot to be optimistic about for today, and I'm pumped, man.
So I need to discuss. I mean, first of all, obviously, in terms of like I'm just really happy things are back to being how they should be. I hate Thursday games. I'm really not even a big fan of primetime games as far as like when I'm watching the Bears. I always want the Bears to play either in the afternoon or preferably at the middle of the day on Sundays. So when we were watching last Thursday's game, we kind of previewed that a little bit in our pregame show then. And the Bears of 2020 continue to be extremely weird. But they won. They win a game against, we went over everything Thursday evening as far as like just how crappy the Bears have been against Tom Brady, how crappy Chuck Pagano has done historically against Tom Brady. And what do you know? The Bears end up going out there and having a hell of a game. And it wasn't a blowout or anything. It was a very hard-fought victory. But
a win is a win, right?
Exactly. And yet we continue to see, and it's not really a surprise, but nationally, the Bears continue to be like near 20. Like they're one of the like lower ranked teams in the NFL. And I get it. On the surface, if you look at it from a statistical level, this team is not by no means should have the record they have. They should absolutely not be sitting on one loss. But yet they continue to be disrespected, but I can't argue with it.
Yeah, no, agreed. I mean, they just have not won a game convincingly. They've underperformed. And yeah, I think nationally, I don't know if it's just because this is our team, but it feels like we're always kind of getting the shaft when it comes to the national media. We finally started to get some love a couple of years ago. And then, we go into the playoffs and just lose a game that we probably should have won. And last year, here's what it is. I think going into last year, there were a lot of people in the national media giving the Bears some props, picking them as Super Bowl contenders. And the Bears let them all down and made them look bad. So maybe this year we're paying the price that all those people who were picking the Bears, to have a big year last year looked a little silly by the end of the year. So I think maybe this year they're just cautious, being extremely cautious with their Bears predictions. And I'm good with that. This locker room seems to come together like a lot of locker rooms do when they're being doubted by the outside voices. So if that's going to help motivate these guys just a little more, not that they should need it, but if it does help just a little more, I'm cool with that.
Sure. It's always nice to have like I don't think part of me as a fan obviously wants like the validation of other non-Chicago fan, Chicago media people to like validate the Bears as a good team. But like, at the end of the day, their record is what it is. And if people don't, at some point, people have to look at the record and respect it, because at some point, ideally, if this team gets past the 8-win threshold, you'd think that at some point somebody will say, well, unless they're like looking at it 500 or so record, that people would say, well, this team just, whatever the circumstances, they just figure out how to win. And I think the Bears fans, because we've obviously watched every game up to this point, I think that we just kind of assume that, like, well, I have faith in the Bears to play well today? Not really. Do I expect them to go and blow out their opposition or anything like that? No, I don't expect the defense to play particularly well, but they win. And that's, when I was making my prediction for this week's game against the Panthers, I simply just said, you know what, I just can't think anymore. I'm throwing the papers up in the air. I'm saying, screw it. Bears win, because that's their modus operandi, is to just go out there, lose for 3 quarters as far as just not having it all together, but somehow they win. They keep things in order.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Let's think about these power rankings, and finally, I think after Thursday night's game, you're starting to see the Bears creep up a little. I've seen a lot where they are in the top 15 now, some closer to 10 than 15. I think ESPN had them at 13. Ironically, though, they had the Bears at 13 and Tampa Bay at 12. But either way, let's think about the teams across the NFL. You go into a game, let's say the Bears are playing on a neutral site against all 32 teams. How many of those 32 teams do you think they would be a considerable favorite versus the Bears? And before, let me just say, the recipe for winning is defense, right? And the Bears have, by most statistical categories, a top 5, top 7 defense this year. And I believe that in big games that defense will continue to show. So when you think of the power rankings, or just think about the landscape of the NFL, how many teams do you think we would be, do you just think we don't have a shot? I mean, just immediately coming to mind, obviously Kansas City scares me. Obviously, sorry, that's my Alexa. Hold on one second.
You've summoned you.
She's reminding me to drink water. Kansas City scares me. All right. Does Seattle scare you with that defense? No way. I'm sorry, but I'm not saying we would win. I'm not saying we'd be a favorite, but I think we would be in the hunt, in the game. The Packers, the Chiefs, those 2 teams scare me. The Bills don't. The Steelers, for the most part, don't. The Rams don't. And we play the Rams next week. So, we're maybe not getting the love, but I do feel a difference with this team. With this defense, obviously, has already proven they can win in big games, but I feel a difference with Nick Foles at quarterback. And he hasn't been spectacular.
No,
but I feel more confident when I watch him play.
Yeah, and there was something I wanted to show you, which I'm sure you've already seen, but people listening or watching may not know, regarding Nick Foles. But the way that you talked about the Bears there, it kind of reminded me of, like, if you've talked to a lot of Bears fans, particularly older Bears fans, who, when you ask them, well, what is it you want out of the Bears? And they say, well, and I'm almost kind of going into the character there. It's like, well, I don't care if they win or lose. I want people to know that the Bears at least will kick your ass, and they'll hit you and they'll hurt you. And it's sort of like, win or lose, whatever, as long as you come into Chicago, you're going to get a beating and you're going to know you played the Bears, that kind of thing. But this isn't what that is. The Bears of 2020.
Did I just hear our first caller of the show today? Was that, what's his name? Piatone Pete? No, I can't remember.
I can't remember where it's from. It was the one guy suggested it was from where their training camp used to be.
Somewhere in Indy, Terre Haute.
Somewhere. It was some weird. I never heard of it.
Yeah.
But there's that meatball fan caller guy. But the Bears now, it's like, you don't. When you come and play the Bears of 2020, it's not so much that you leave physically beaten or bruised or anything. It's more like you leave like looking at your hands like, how did we lose? Mm-hmm. How did we played the game the right way? We lost. I thought we had all the pieces. And I feel like that's just the befuddling nature of this year's Bears. But to Nick Foles, and so I'm going to go ahead and share this here on the screen. This was a great breakdown by Emmanuel Acho. and he kind of discussed
Awesome.
why.
It was awesome.
You've seen this? Yeah, it's really short.
Yeah,
It's only like a minute.
phenomenal.
Or so.
Yeah.
But let me go ahead and share that here. So here's what Emmanuel Acho had to say about Nick Foles.
Nick Foles is exactly who should be starting for the Chicago Bears, and he will show you why in just 13 seconds. The game is on the line. The Bucs are in an all-out blitz. They're bringing more than the Chicago Bears can block. Nick Foles recognizes that. He motions Montgomery back. But watch what he sees first. Shaquille Barrett, who was blitzing, he gives a quick little hand signal to the safety, Winfield. He says, hey, I'm calling my blitz off. I'm going to now peel the running back, meaning if the running back releases, he's on me. So Foles sees that first. Now listen to the communication afterwards. He says, hey, three's dead, three's dead. He talks to his left tackle, Charles Leno. Talking to his left tackle, Charles Leno, he says, hey, 1, 2, 3. Shaquille Barrett, he's dead. He's not blitzing anymore. He's going to peel the running back. Charles Leno's like, okay, bet. We good then. Now listen to the next communication. After Foles says that, he now talks to Allen Robinson. And he says, hey, rub. When Shaquille Barrett peels, I need you to rub Shaquille Barrett so that David Montgomery can be set free. And just like that, in 13 seconds, Nick Foles wins the game for the Chicago Bears.
And then he drops a dime. I mean, look at that ball. Drops it in between 3 defenders. That was, a phenomenal breakdown. It's Emmanuel Acho, right?
Yep.
Quickly becoming one of my favorite follows. There's certain guys on Twitter that I just love to follow him. You know who else is a great one? Brian Baldinger. You ever watch any of his posts?
Yeah, he's got some good stuff too. These guys I love just anybody who can really look at like it's one thing to have any sort of number of pundits who are just like going completely by feel or they only follow like surface level stuff of the NFL. When guys can actually break down X's and O's and cadences and stuff like the minutia of the game, like that stuff's just like chef's kiss. Mwah, you know, that stuff's phenomenal. Like I love watching that shit. It's very addictive.
Absolutely. Just that play alone. And again, I feel like I always have to say this whenever I criticize Trubisky. I have to preface it by saying I'm a big Trubisky guy. I still think long term, it wouldn't surprise me if he becomes a starter or someone has some success. But that's a play right there Mitch wouldn't have made. He wouldn't have made the read. And if he did, he wouldn't have thrown the dime.
Nope.
I mean, that was just when Nagy said at the end of last year he wanted Mitch to be, I think he said obsessed or be, he needed to be perfect or improve as far as reading coverage. I think that it's something like that. That's what he meant.
Right. And I mean, again, like you said, watching that just again, that's like 90 seconds of a simple breakdown. And you can just see that like, I mean, I don't know. I haven't watched the film as like closely with Trubisky's history, but I feel like that stuff is just like that's what separates the men from the boys kind of stuff. Where it's like I'm reading the defense, I'm reading I'm informing and communicating the line of scrimmage and receivers to like make the play, and then you also trust Allen Robinson on that play. He actually avoided a pick.
Yeah,
and that was brilliant on his part. And there's the subtleties like that where it adds up to victories just by being smart.
Yeah, so I posted a video on the page on Bears Fans Online. I don't know if you had a chance to watch. It was a little long. I think it was maybe a 6 or 7 minute video, and it's by a Bears writer / podcaster Robert Schmitz. Did you get a chance to watch that video at all?
I did not.
Watch it. It's all about the in-game adjustments, the chess match between Nagy and who's the defensive coordinator for Tampa Bay. Is it Todd Bowles, right? Yeah. I'm telling you, you will come away with a newfound respect for Matt Nagy. The different defense that Bowles was rolling out and the way that Nagy and Foles adjusted mid-game. I'm telling you, I'm a big Nagy is maddening sometimes. I don't question his ability to lead, but sometimes the in-game calling, Patterson in short yardage, his inability to read the in-game momentum drives me crazy. But as a schemer, as an offensive mind, I came away very impressed. So I'm telling you, not just you, but anybody out there who's listening, watch that clip. I did post it in there, and you'll come away pretty impressed. But it was just really about the different defenses that Todd Bowles is rolling out, and he's stealing a page from Kirby Smart down in Georgia with this ghost defense. And of course, now I haven't watched film the way that this guy who broke it down, but apparently this was the first time that Tampa Bay had rolled this out all year. And it was very cool to see how Nagy adjusted and how his adjustments really led to the Bears win. It was huge. So check it out. Awesome tape. But the other thing that stands out is this is the way I felt with Mitch through his first, 4 games or 3 games. Felt like the offense was close. Like they were moving, but then they would just, something stupid would stall a drive. And I think the numbers even showed that, the time of possession numbers. And now you see in this breakdown of the Tampa game how close I think this offense really is. They pretty much owned Tampa all game. The difference was 1 or 2 plays a drive where it was either assignment breakdown or a bad pass, an overthrow. This game very easily could have been, a double-digit win for the Bears, and you'll see that after watching that.
Yeah, and whether or not the Bears will ever, and I will find that video and I'll retweet it from the Bears Fans Online Twitter, at Bears Fans Online if you guys want to follow. And that's kind of one of the things with the Bears this year is that it typically comes down to 1 or 2 plays, and I just don't know if this team, with the difficulty of the upcoming schedule, and including this Panthers game, just if they'll ever, for a team that will probably finish the season with a pretty positive record, if they'll have at any point a win that's basically dictated by halftime. I just don't know if that's in this team's DNA this year. I don't know if it matters. Do
you think we have a top 7 defense, top defense?
I would say top 10 or so. I think that the defense is there, but I was going to ask you about this today. As far as the Bears getting sort of the benefit of playing on Thursday, one of the few is that you have sort of an extended break. You have more time for guys to recover. And I think the defense is in particular grateful for those extra days. Guys like Akeem Hicks, Mack, Quinn, Trevathan, guys who have been kind of routinely dealing with recurring and nagging injuries coming into this game. And did you want to get into it? Just talk about Panthers here a little bit?
A couple. I want to just let's put a bow on the Tampa Bay win.
Sure.
And then let's jump to the Panthers. But as far as their defense, before we do that, I got to tell you, you look around the league and there's some really bad or some gaudy offensive numbers getting put up. And I think one thing that a lot of people are ignoring is the lack of fans, the correlation between lack of fans and struggling defenses. I think we definitely forget how much having that home crowd helps a defense. So, which to me makes what the Bears have done even more impressive. Our secondary is playing very well. Corners are going to get beat, but overall, if you had to grade our 2 corners, how do you not give them an A? I just think they've been playing phenomenal football. And with that defense, especially as the season goes on and we're starting to see teams have fans back, I think that with this defense, we're gonna be in a lot of games, and that's where the continuity on the other side of the ball is going to be key. I think the more Foles plays, the better this offense should get, and it should be exciting. Exciting for A, where we shouldn't get blown out in too many games, and B, our offense should improve. You would think, right?
Yeah, the presence of fans, I think, will only invigorate defense, whether it's at home or on the road. I don't know. Obviously, you can't begin to predict the return of fans to the NFL at this point. But in theory, with fans returning to games here potentially over the next latter half of the season, that the defense would get that extra bit of juice, get that little bit of momentum, whether you're on the road trying to silence opposing fans or you're at home trying to rev up the home crowd. I would think that it would really help them get that extra, if they're dealing with a lot of fatigue and a lot of just kind of woes by that point, that
give them just a little extra juice, right?
Right. It'll light that fire. But
I'm going to the Tennessee game, so fingers crossed that I know Tennessee started last week letting fans in, so hopefully that continues. But we got a group of 8 of us going down.
And I think Mayor Lightfoot, I think that's her name and everything. She kind of, I think everyone's kind of just kicking the can as far as returning.
She was pretty hardcore earlier in the year about it, basically saying no way. But she did release a statement saying that now they're having conversations. So there's hope, and obviously you want to do the responsible thing. So, we'll see how that goes. But Either way, Tampa, huge win. When I think of guys who just really, really stood out, well, let me ask you, defensive side of the ball, if you had to name, 2 MVPs from the Tampa game or 2 guys who just made a difference, who would you go with?
Well, I mean, Khalil Mack is obviously trouble. I think it's one of those things to where it's hard to compliment. It's hard to say like this defensive lineman, whoever it is, because they essentially are all getting the benefit of having Khalil Mack there to harass. And I mean, Khalil Mack did some unworldly stuff. Yeah,
unbelievable.
It's cool to watch him. Like he basically German suplex that line, that left tackle there. And I mean, again, we talked about in Thursday's pregame how the Tampa offensive line was like something to be, really like concerned about and a priority on defense, but they tore him up and they did a hell of a job. But
Mac, I mean, even Quinn, when going back and watching the All 22, he was a lot more disruptive. That was exciting to see.
He's slowly coming around, and he fell on the football. He was the only one to fall on that football when Kyle Fuller laid that hit out.
Did you hear when they asked him after the game why? What was the reason for that?
No, what did he say?
He said, my defensive coordinator last year in Dallas was Rod Marinelli. Lovie Smith guy. You remember how obsessed Lovie Smith was in practice? That ball ever hits the turf, you pick it up and run the other way with it. It showed through in the game, and it showed with Quinn. Clearly he was being coached up on that last year. So.
Man, and I really, that to me, that's not even a thing you should ever emphasize. That should just be ingrained in you as a football player.
Agreed.
And like treat every ball on the ground as if it's loose. Fall on that thing, pick it up, run with it. Like just get possession of it.
Well, even like three other Bears just walked past it. Fuller was one of them, who's one of the most well-coached guys in the league. And then like 3 other guys walked right past it. He picked it up, then fumbled it again. But luckily, I think it was the minute he picked it up and the play was blown dead. It was Bears ball.
Right.
Yeah, so I agree with you on Matt. I mean, I'm sorry. This may not be the popular opinion in Chicago, but Khalil Mack is worth every single penny and draft pick we've given up. That's my opinion. The guy is just a game wrecker. Even when he's not even when his numbers don't show it, you watch the tape, he is just a freak of nature, and I'm so glad that we have him on our side.
Yes, absolutely. Like Khalil Mack is unworldly, but just to further your point about the defensive back play, like I know that teams have been picking on him, and he's not. He kind of has his moments, but for the most part, God, man, Jalen Johnson is just so good, and he's one of those guys who it's like I don't even think about him that much because he's come in as a rookie, a second-round pick. And he has been unflappable. Guy has not been, the moment's not too big for him. He's a professional, and he's handling the job of going from the NCAA to being a starting cornerback in the NFL with a lot of grace. And that it's really nice not to have to worry about teams going after that side of the field too regularly, because it's like you got to show him some respect.
Yeah, I think Pace potentially has hit a home run with this kid. I think he's a potential number 1 corner, and we got to be extremely pleased with what we're seeing out of him. The one knock coming out though was health, and how those shoulders are. It's one hit. So knock on wood. Let's hope he's got a nice long career, and if he does, I think we have a future stud cornerback, a potential number 1 corner on our hands. Who Fuller's hit against Tampa was huge, game-changing moment there, and you gotta, I know that, officiating the NFL in the past and even currently it takes a bit of a beating. But I really feel like the officiating committee is coming to this season saying, hey, let's maybe let these guys play a little more. You're seeing a lot less flags. And to go back in time, I think they had to do what they had to do by getting a lot more ticky-tack with personal fouls. And because the NFL was heading down a dangerous road with people using their helmets as weapons, things like that. So the last couple of years, it's been overdone with flags. But you're starting to see that maybe they did, by doing that, they changed, the kind of the mindset for these players. And now this year, I feel like they're letting them play more. And on that play, and I feel like I've seen this before, where they throw a rough in the passer or a unnecessary roughness penalty, where the refs come together in the middle of the field and they actually watch it on the Jumbotron and then make a decision. And I think they did that on the Fuller hit. And I'm so glad that they did, because it doesn't get more technically sound than that hit.
No, and like they said in the game, the commentary crew was looking at the replay and we're going like, how can you flag that? Like that is exactly what we need to be showing teams at the beginning of every season. It's like, this is how you can make a really big, momentous, clean football hit and not like put anybody's brain in danger,
Mm-hmm.
And
credit to the refs for picking up the flag. I mean, I love it.
And we have been seeing more of that this season. And I really hope that continues to be the trend where you have officials and that's one of the most difficult parts of being an official for a football game, much less an NFL game. A lot of this is just the game happens really fast when you're in the middle of a play. A lot of stuff happens at once. Your attention is spread out, and you kind of have to make a judgment call. And unlike baseball, where it's kind of like, well, the human element of the game, with football, they have the advantage of being like, well, we have like a 300-foot screen up there.
Mm-hmm.
Just look up at the damn replay and say, take a second. There's enough pauses and natural pauses in the game to where you can say like, okay, we looked at that again. That's obviously not XYZ. Just clean it up, pick the flag up, and move on.
Yeah, this is $1 billion industry, right? I just think that there's got to be the end goal here is getting it right.
Exactly.
And I think that they have to continue to press forward in an effort to do that. Meaning, don't rule anything out. If you have to have your head of officiating of each game wearing an earpiece that's tied into a group in New York or wherever who's helping you get the right plays called, why wouldn't you look into doing that? So either way, I feel like it's been much better. Don't get me wrong. There's been some bad calls there, but again, listen, I tried refereeing a football game once. Have you ever done anything like that?
No, I've never officiated anything. I couldn't imagine. Let me tell you
how hard it is. I'm thinking, this will be easy. Middle of the play, I accidentally blew the whistle. Everybody stopped. And it was like, I didn't do it on purpose. It's just like, I'm telling you, it is. I immediately said, this isn't for me. It's so hard to get it right. So like I said earlier, it's $1 billion industry. Why would you not do everything possible? If that means using technology or continuing to use technology to get the right play, do it. But again, I've been pretty impressed for the most part with officiating this year. I feel like less flags are letting these guys play a little more. Although I would love to see a couple more holding penalties called against whoever's blocking Khalil Mack. But again, beggars can't be choosers. On the flip side, so we talked about a couple guys who stood out on defense against Tampa. Offensively, who really stood out to you?
I got it. I mean, the first name that came to mind when you asked was Cordell Patterson. He's, as far as like on offense, he was pretty good, but as far as like he had a lot of just all around versatile yardage that game that really came into play. I'm trying to really think. I mean, Allen Robinson's failure to not failure, but he didn't do the pick. Who comes to mind for you? I guess I'm trying to nobody comes to mind off the tip of my tongue.
Yeah, it's so hard, isn't it? Because it was just kind of like that workman-like effort. Patterson, he made a couple big plays. Jimmy Graham, probably. I mean, I guess Nick Foles and Jimmy Graham. On the offensive line, they, similar to on the flip side of the ball, a cornerback that you really only spot them when they're getting beat. But I think the offensive line, even though our running game has struggled the last couple of weeks, is night and day difference from last year. And I think as the season goes on, that's going to continue to show. So I think they did a pretty decent job. But I do believe that Nagy's comments around the details, I think a lot of that he was complaining about the offensive line. There were some blown blocking assignments in the run and in the pass on Thursday night that I have got to be driving him crazy, because a couple of them I think would have sprung pretty big runs where the guy just flat out didn't go to the right block. So, I would say Foles, Jimmy Graham. I mean, let's give him some love.
Sure.
The guy got so much heat when we signed him because of his history, especially his most recent history in Green Bay. We're giving him $8 million a year, which to me, I don't think it was that big of a deal, especially when you consider his track record around staying on the field. And then you looked around in the league and you saw other tight ends like freaking Greg Olsen getting $7 million. To me, it wasn't that bad of a signing, but I know, a lot of people complained about it. Well, the guy's, he's playing. I mean, and he's doing it. Not only is he playing, you get the feeling like he's bringing a little bit of an edge to that offensive side of the ball that's been lacking. So I think kudos to him. I think he played a very nice game. And I think as the season goes on, him and Nick Foles are going to continue to develop that. So it was a little tougher on the offensive side of the ball, but defensively, overall hard-fought win against a good Tampa team. I know you made the comment earlier around like just kind of like we don't really know how they're winning or they're just kind of getting it done. Or I don't know exactly how you remember it, but to me, I think they beat Tom Brady up. And that, you saw Tom Brady in the second half overthrowing guys or throwing bad balls. That to me isn't by chance. That's because of the consistent pressure, the hits, the contact, making him feel uncomfortable. And you got to give him credit for that. And I think that was a big reason why we won the game. So exciting to get the win, and a game that a lot of people thought we were going to lose. Not me, though. I did predict the Bears victory. But great win, 4-1 on to Carolina.
And speaking of Carolina and Bears draft picks under Ryan Pace, there's a very significant one we need to discuss. Well, I guess two. The first one I'd like to discuss is much more pressing, and that's James Daniels having a pretty excellent year so far. But he, I guess he had a torn pectoral muscle, I believe. Put him on IR. He's done for the season. Now it's such a drag. So, I mean, he came into camp looking huge, and he was playing lights out,
playing very good football to start the season. Definitely turned a corner. And
now we're looking at potentially. He was replaced by Alex Bars on Thursday, who came around after a rough start. But a lot of people are speculating that it's going to be Rashad Coward who will step up and play left guard, which is alien considering he played mostly right guard last year, and he did not do it terribly well. So I would assume, I would hope that it would be Bars starting at guard today, just based on that's the position he's been playing at. And but I mean, what do you think? Do you think they're going to go Coward, or what do you expect?
First of all, this hurts because James Daniels, what has clearly focused on his conditioning in the offseason, came back looking like a monster, and his play on the field definitely reflected that. So it's a big loss. It is. The good news is Pace has shown the ability to find guards, whether it be free agent or bottom of rosters in the past. So I do, it is a position that you can find somebody on the streets that can come in and get it done. But it's frustrating because I'm a Daniels fan, and he's been playing pretty good football. The good news is he's young. I mean, what is he? He's still only 22, 23 years old.
Very, very young.
He's going to have a long career, and I hope it's in a Bears uniform. But we've got to move on. Listen, I think there's a long line over the years of bottom of the roster or practice squad guys or camp cuts that Bears fans have fallen in love with. And Alex Bars is one of those guys. And I have obviously, I've been a little hesitant with him. And then he comes in last week and right out of the gate struggled, but then definitely settled in as the game went on and played much better down the stretch. But I got news for all you Alex Bars supporters out there, the people who have been screaming for him to come in and play for the last year and a half. If he can't beat out Rashad Coward, we got big issues with Alex Bars' career in the NFL. Yep. So I'm not a Rashad Coward fan. I think last year the mental mistakes, he played so soft. I'm very concerned with him starting at left guard. Now, some of the problems with him last year really were problems with the entire line, not finishing blocks, not knowing their assignments. So who knows? Maybe he can come in and benefit like everybody else has this year from the change in coaching. But if Alex Bars cannot beat him out, then hopefully this will kind of put to bed all these people who've been screaming for him to get some playing time over the years.
Yeah, and even to further the confusion, if Coward were to start at left guard today, this would be his third position because he was drafted as a defensive lineman and was converted to right guard / right tackle. I think they kind of moved him around a little bit, trying to figure out which way to put him. And this would be at left guard. But to further that, the OL coach, Juan Castillo, he actually was out all this week. Well, he was coaching remotely because he was quarantined with positive COVID-19 test. So to me,
I don't believe he tested positive, right?
Oh, no, he was in contact. It was
contact.
like a proximity.
So he's quarantined. I think that's a 14-day quarantine, isn't it?
I believe it is at least 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, that's concerning.
So I'm not too terribly worried about him necessarily so much as like, if you've got a major transition happening where you need to get the details right, because you're going to have a guy stepping into left guard potentially who's never played that position. And, this is where you want to get money. You should get the details down. And I mean, while I'm sure that the backup offensive line coach, or the position coach, I can't remember, Donovan Raiola.
Dominic or Donovan?
Donovan. Yeah, not
Okay.
Dominic.
Okay, I didn't know that.
I was a little excited that it was going to be Dominic Raiola. I'm like, shit.
Yeah, at that point, if it was Dominic, I'd say suit him up and throw him out there.
Exactly, yeah. But no, so he's the assistant OL coach, and I guess he was kind of just the headset on, was talking to Castillo about getting him right. And I really like Juan Castillo so far. Of the stuff I've heard from him so far, it seems like an interesting and very dynamic person. So we'll see. There has not been an announcement as far as who's going to start on that. We do have some actives and inactives for today's game against Carolina. And the active one that surprised is John Jenkins will be playing for the Bears. He's active today after missing a few weeks. He had a thumb injury. It looks like Deion Bush is going to miss more time. And of course, our friend of the show, Riley Ridley, who is just going to be inactive again out of tradition. And Duke Kelly will continue his weird redshirt season. But more importantly, for the Panthers, they are not going to have Curtis Samuel. He is out.
Wow. I thought he was going to make a go of it. That's interesting.
Nope, not today. And Eli Apple is not going to play as well.
Yeah, that actually hurts the Bears. I prefer he be on the field. So.
Same. But they also last week their best defensive lineman, he's one of their veteran players, Kawan Short. He was placed on injured reserve. They do have a first-round pick, Derek Brown, coming in, 6'5", 318 pounds. He's had a pretty good season so far. He'll be asked to carry the load.
Kawan Short, a Purdue alum, right?
I believe that's correct. Yes.
Yeah.
But the Panthers don't exactly have the most blistering or the most impressive defense against the run. They are the second worst overall defense, about 5 yards allowed per rush. And the Bears offense, they're going to have their work cut out for them here with the next few games. You don't want to overlook Carolina, but this is also not a game you should particularly, fear, because the Panthers are a very beatable team. And as far as the Bears offense against the Panthers defense, how do you feel they size up? Because it's going to be another game where we need to have, and Nagy, like you said, he was pounding the table about the run game and getting the run game established, and how we can't be in these third and long situations. Do you think that the Bears offense will have a more refined week here against a lesser defense?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think, it's going to be a big concern or question who starts at the guard position, which I know we already talked about.
Yep.
When I think of this defense, I think going into this without Quan Short is big. This is not a overly talented defense. They play hard. They're not very physical. They're struggling against the pass, struggling against the run, and losing Short, I think, is going to make that even a bigger need, or a bigger struggle. So I think the key for the Bears, and it's been the key all year, is winning first down. And I think today's the day that David Montgomery should get 20 carries. And 12 of them should be in the first half. Really come out early in the series and set the pace. I mean, if you're getting 3-4 yards a clip on first down, then that 2nd and 6, 2nd and 7 is much more manageable than 2nd and 10. 2nd and 10, you're much more predictable. 2nd and 7, 2nd and 6, you got to keep the defense guessing, and that's where Foles, the downfield ball, is going to open up for Foles. So, no, I mean, this defense doesn't scare me, but I said the same freaking thing about the Colts defense, and the Bears laid an egg against them. So I'm hoping. Normally, I would almost consider this a trap game for the Bears offense, because they're coming off a win, and they have some tough games, coming up. I could see them laying an egg here, but man, I think Nagy being so fired up after the Thursday night win and the Bears having a little bit extra time to prepare, this defense doesn't scare me. I think today's the day that we see a 3-touchdown, 4-touchdown game out of the Bears. But again, it starts up front, starts on early downs. You win first down, I think you win the game.
Fair enough. See, I think that there's part of me really hopes that today is. So last time the Bears played the Panthers, it was the coming out party for Eddie Jackson. And this was 3 years ago, I believe, where Jackson had the 2 picks, and then we kind of celebrated the beginning of his career in great fashion. But for the Bears offense this week, maybe I'm delusional, but I really want this to be the Cole Kmet game where he just does something. I'm not asking him to have 2 touchdowns or 2 long plays or anything. I just want him to be like frequently involved and do something, like, because he's been on the field maybe 15 snaps a game. He's got 1 catch all season. I just want a little more. I want the Bears to just acknowledge his existence in some way today and have like something to his credit. Now, obviously, it's a big game in symbolically for David Montgomery. Because a lot of people have been talking about Mike Davis coming into this game. We'll talk about him in just a minute. But David Montgomery, part of the big thing with Mike Davis being released last year was that the Bears had such faith in Montgomery to carry the burden and kind of be the feature back.
Do you?
This offense. I'm still a little. I mean, I'm encouraged about Montgomery. I think he's a good running back. I just don't know. I feel like we still don't know him well enough. Because like with Jordan Howard, for example, we knew exactly what we were going to get in Jordan Howard. You either ran him like 20, 25 times a game to get that froth working up, and he would just get better as the game went on, as you continually fed him. David Montgomery, he's got a great tendency to fall forward. Seems to always get you net positive yardage.
Never goes down to the first tackler. Right?
I love that about him. But as a complete back, I just don't think he's defined yet. I'm not that I don't think he can do it or he could be.
I agree.
But it's just jury's still out. He's still a young player.
So and I don't know if that's on Montgomery or if that's on Matt Nagy. Get this kid the ball. There's so many times that we see Nagy, in short yardage. You have in opinion, a very good short yardage back, and he goes a different direction. So I think, the Cohen injury sucks because I think Tariq would have benefited big time from Nick Foles being at quarterback. But I thought the one good thing would be we'd see more Montgomery, and he is playing more snaps, but he's not necessarily getting more carries. So, I'm with you on Montgomery. I think we're definitely on the same page.
So as far as the Bears defense going against the Carolina offense, the big story of this game is the Mike Davis revenge narrative where Mike Davis, it's just ridiculous. So Mike Davis brought in last season to the Chicago Bears. He played, I think he had 5 games. He was initially a starter for a while for the team. He wasn't very impressive. I didn't think he was all that great.
He is what he is. He's a backup running back.
And for the first time in like recent Bears history, or maybe even Bears history, as far as I remember, they waived him and they got a compensatory pick for him, which is just like something the Bears just never do.
It was the responsible thing for Ryan Pace to do.
And everybody basically said, what a savvy move by Ryan Pace. Like that's, a lot of people like to trash on him for the big stuff, the big misses and stuff. But it's like that's the little stuff that like really makes a GM, a knowledgeable and savvy NFL GM.
And that pick, I believe it turned into Nick Foles, didn't it?
I believe it was. I believe that was the 4th round pick traded for Nick Foles. So, I mean, that's a net win. You go from Mike Davis to Nick Foles, win.
100%.
There's no argument.
Even if Nick Foles hasn't taken a snap this year, that's still a win. I'm sorry, it is.
And I mean, they talked a lot to Mike Davis. I was reading some of the Carolina press this week about kind of asking him about how he felt about the Bears and stuff like that. And he mentioned, he said, they asked him, were you mad when he got cut? And he said, I don't know how else. If anyone who gets cut is pissed off. He's like, that's just how it is. But as far as he was like, they asked, do you know why you were cut? And he said, I don't know what happened in that department. He kind of answered and didn't answer at the same time. But to Mike Davis's credit, he's come in Carolina and he's done a hell of a job. He's had a hell of a run here, replacing whose name escapes me.
Chris
for whatever McCaffrey, yes. And McCaffrey.
Thank God he's not playing. I'm sorry. Mike Davis is playing well. I'll take Mike Davis all day if I have to go against him or McCaffrey.
Yeah,
I'm taking Mike Davis. Yeah.
And there's tons of just idiot Panthers fans who are glad in some ways. They would sooner take Mike Davis over Christian McCaffrey. I don't know why. I don't know if it's a money thing, but I've read this and it makes me feel like dizzy, like I'm going to throw up. Like what are you smoking here? Anyway. So Mike Davis, do you think that like he's going to have a little extra pep in his step if you're going against the Bears?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. But I think he will have a little extra motivation. That's one answer. But then the other question is, does that scare me? No. I mean, It's Mike Davis, and if Mike Davis comes in and runs for 100 yards, I mean, it is what it is, and there's no way we win the game if that happens. But Mike Davis seems like a great teammate, seems like a nice guy, and a solid player. But he doesn't scare me the way some running backs do, and I don't even understand. If anything, this is the Teddy Bridgewater game to me.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
He on all accounts wanted to come to the Bears, but he was afraid that they would not commit to him. I mean, this is what I'm hearing, right? Sure. That they would not commit to him to being the starting quarterback if he chose the Panthers. So to me, that's the narrative that scares me. Teddy Bridgewater, who already has a history of kind of killing the Bears, doesn't he? I remember I was at a game in Minnesota when he beat us on a Stephon Diggs touchdown to win the game. I remember him coming back in New Orleans and just running, checking down all day on us and for almost 300 yards with the win. So to me, that's the narrative. And it's getting a little silenced because Mitch isn't starting. But could you imagine, especially Bears fans, if we're going this game with Mitch on one end and a guy we could have had but wouldn't commit to on the other? That would be a huge recipe for disaster on Bears Twitter. So that's the angle that scares me. Mike Davis seems like a great guy, super happy for him. But Ryan Pace made the right decision in cutting our third string running back for a 4th round pick. And if any Bears fan disagrees with that, they need to move to Terre Haute with our first caller.
The thing about Teddy Bridgewater that I have a tremendous amount of respect for Teddy Bridgewater. I feel like he has. I remember when he got hurt, and there were reports of players like vomiting in the practice facility because his knee was so disfigured in that initial injury. He's had to turn it around quite a bit. I mean, he was always a promising talent, and bet on himself in New Orleans, and he's turned it into a nice, profitable 3-year contract out in Carolina, where he's, for all intents and purposes, playing very well and succeeding.
Who would you rather have, Teddy Bridgewater or Nick Foles?
Teddy Bridgewater.
Even at 20, what would they pay him? 20 mil?
Around there, yeah. I feel like
Nick Foles $8 million. That's a big difference.
Yeah, but there's a big difference between the two guys. I feel like, and again, we've seen what, 2 games, 2.5 games. Nick Foles. We don't have the full narrative of what he is necessarily on the Bears.
Nick Foles did go 14-2 and took the Eagles to a Super Bowl, and he also came into Soldier Field against a dominant defense and eliminated us in the playoffs. Thank God, or thanks to Cody Parkey on that one. But Nick Foles still made plays that game.
And I mean, I have nothing against Nick Foles. I really like Nick Foles. I'm glad that he's having some modicum of success here in Chicago. But Teddy Bridgewater's still pretty young. He's got a lot of promise still. And while the number is expensive, I don't feel like I feel like still that's below average for a guy like that could really step up and be a tremendous boon to your offense. And again, I'm not gonna. If you're just asking me simply on the surface, if I had to pick one, if I was picking a team, I'd take Bridgewater. But I mean, I'm certainly not complaining about the situation.
I don't know I'm not saying I disagree with you. I'm just kind of presenting both sides.
Sure.
And it does kind of strike me as a little odd that people automatically assume now that we've given up on Mitch, we have to draft a quarterback next year. I mean, Nick Foles, after his Philly stint, and he was, one of the top free agent quarterbacks on the market, and somebody gave him a lot of money. And now, granted, Jacksonville overpaid, and that was an insanely stupid contract. But Jacksonville wasn't the only team willing to build and invest around Nick Foles. So I don't know who I would prefer between the two, but I don't think it's a very easy answer. And I don't know that I'm sold on Teddy Bridgewater. When I watch him play, reminds me a lot of Alex Smith. Very solid quarterback, a leader. But can he win you the big game? Because and I don't know that he can. So I don't know. I'm not saying it's a slam dunk. I'm just saying I don't know if I'm 100% on Bridgewater over Foles.
No, and I mean, because basically the contract that Bridgewater signed with Carolina was essentially what Mike Glennon signed when he joined the Bears, which to me, say what you will about Jonathan Quinn or Henry Burris, current Bears quarterback coach Henry Burris, but I think
CFL legend Henry Burris,
Hall of Fame CFLer Henry Burris, Mike Glennon. That was to me the darkest quarterback era of the Bears was Mike Glennon. I can't get into it enough how much I hate Mike Glennon and how much I did not want him on the Bears.
I'm not. I agree with you. I was not a big Glennon fan. I do. A lot of people were thinking Glennon was ready to be a starter. I mean, Tampa offered him $7, $8, $9 million to stick, just to be back up to Winston. And even when he came out, I mean, people thought long term he had value as a starter. Now, any hope I had went away in the first game I watched him play in a Bears uniform. He just looked freaking terrible. But man, we've been through. That's a bold statement. We've been through some very dark quarterback days. I'll see your Mike Glennon and I'll raise you a Moses Marino or yeah. I mean, I don't know. But the money makes it work. So you're right.
Right.
I mean, that was a terrible, terrible call.
And I mean, that's obviously we're going back and then we're turning the clock back a little bit, talking about Mike freaking Glennon. But to be more pressing, as far as bad contracts go, and we'll kind of wrap up the show up here with this. A lot of Bears fans came away a little disappointed this weekend when Le'Veon Bell, recently released from the Jets, where the Jets, has been discussed, are just a total dumpster fire of a franchise right now. He was on the short list of the Bears were on Bell's short list, I guess, initially, but he ended up signing with the Kansas City Chiefs. And a lot of fans were very vocal about how they were disappointed that the Bears didn't bring him in. But what are your thoughts on Le'Veon Bell generally now? And do you fault his decision to not come to Chicago?
Well, we thought he was a candidate. We thought Ryan Pace was kicking the tires, but I don't know that that's true. I don't think I personally don't think Ryan Pace even considered it. He just doesn't seem like the kind of guy Ryan Pace wants to bring into this locker room. And I'm not saying Le'Veon Bell's a guy who belongs up. I think sometimes he's associated with like Antonio Brown because they had similar history. I don't think he's nearly, that much of a head case. But I do believe he is a selfish player. And Ryan Pace got a history of not bringing selfish players into this locker room. And also, Ryan Pace drafted David Montgomery. And if you and I sit back and watch these games and think we might have a franchise back, but we haven't seen enough out of him, Ryan Pace probably thinks the same thing. So for me, if somebody were to say to Ryan Pace, are you kicking the tires on Le'Veon Bell? My guess is his assumption would be, we don't need Le'Veon Bell. We need to see more David Montgomery. So I'm cool with it. It would have concerned me to bring him in because then we would have just complained all game when Matt Nagy didn't use Le'Veon Bell. I don't think, maybe I'm being naive, but I think we can win and compete with the backfield that we have now, especially Montgomery being our every down back. Now, granted, the depth took a hit with Tariq going down, but he's not the guy that I would have said, let's bring him in to replace Tariq Cohen. I think it's just not the same role. So, no, I'm okay with it. And to be honest with you, I don't think it was ever even a serious consideration for Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy.
Yeah. No, and I don't think it was either. And I do believe that there's definitely, the Bears are very character driven. And I think that the last two times the Bears have ever taken a chance on guys with character issues were obviously Brandon Marshall, which was, a mixed experience. In some regards, very successful. In others, it was just disastrous. And the infamous Jay Ratliff acquisition, which I believe that was one of Pace's first signings. And I think he actually went to ownership to get their blessing to sign him. And within like 2 weeks, he had gotten arrested or something. They moved on.
Well, that's the guy who didn't he come in, try to get into the practice facility and they had to have security escort him out or something too.
He was, there was something maniacal happening.
He did play. And he was pretty dominant when he played. Not dominant for a D tackle. Sometimes it doesn't show up on tape, but the guy, he was a solid player.
Yeah,
but
solid.
but yeah, just definitely didn't fit what Pace I think values in his players, and it shows. Like this is a good team. They seem to have very good character makeup as a team. They root for each other, and I think that's because Ryan Pace in his scouting does put a value on things like that, on work ethic and just someone with high value characteristics. So no, I don't think it was ever really an option. Speaking on the flip side of that, and I know we got to wrap up here. Everybody was criticizing not going after Snack Harris, and I agreed. But man, did you see the picture of him reporting to camp?
No, what's up with Snacks?
He's a big guy, right? Well, he looks even bigger. Clearly, the working out was not anything going on while he was waiting to sign with the team. Odds are he will not be ready to play for a couple of weeks. So do yourself a favor and Google that, because there was a picture of him showing up at camp looking probably about 50 pounds overweight, and doesn't look like he's lifted a weight in a year. So, but no, Le'Veon Bell, I'm okay with it. It does. It scares me to a little. It scares me a little amount that he did sign with the Chiefs. But hey, the only way that affects us is if we're playing in the Super Bowl, and that's an issue. That's a situation I'd be happy to entertain. So.
Well, as we round out the show here, of course, we got to get picks in for the game. I believe the Bears will win 23-19. 19 seems to be the magic number for the Bears defense. So I believe they will give the Panthers 19 points, and the Bears offense will somehow scrounge together more than that to move to 5-1. Chris, what say you about Bears?
Yeah, I think that this is the game that we see this offense start to click. I'm going to predict a Bears win of 27-17. So 3 touchdowns and a couple field goals. But more importantly, I think this is the game we see this offense really start to put drives together. They've struggled in the first quarter this season, and I think that's going to change today. Look for a Bears 10-point first quarter. I think they're going to come out of the gate swinging. So.
All right. Well, on that note, we will wrap up just a few minutes early. But, of course, you can always join us on the BearsFansOnline.com message board. And thanks for watching us live today. We'll be back next week when the Bears will take on the Los Angeles Rams, and hopefully we'll be discussing a Bears win here today. For Chris, and for myself, and for BearsFansOnline.com, thank you all very much for watching and for listening. We'll see you next time.